Nina James held her son's hand as they approached the front gate of Westbridge Elementary, the two of them walking at their usual unhurried pace. Her hoodie was navy blue, sleeves pushed up to her elbows. The hem of her jeans brushed the tops of her worn sneakers. She looked like any other tired mother on a school morning. Except she wasn't. She noticed the glance from the security guard before he even said a word. The way he straightened. The shift in posture. Then came the voice, flat but firm. "Ma'am, this gate is for parents of enrolled students only." Nina didn't react right away. She squeezed her son's hand gently, reassuring him without a word. Then she answered. "He is enrolled. My name is Nina James. We're here to finalize some paperwork with the office." The guard's eyebrows lifted. Not hostile, not kind. Suspicious. "I'll need to see ID," he said, already stepping toward her as if proximity would make her claim less believable. She reached into her tote, calm, unbothered, pulled out her driver's license and held it steady in front of him. He stared at it too long, looked at her, back at the ID. Still didn't move. Then, without returning it, he added, "Just wait here. I'll call someone from the office to verify." Nina didn't argue. She just nodded once, watching as the guard turned and muttered something into his radio, one hand resting casually on his belt, like he was bracing for something more. She didn't say a word. But her son, 8 years old and already picking up on things no child should have to notice, looked up at her and asked softly, "Are we in trouble?" She knelt beside him and whispered, "No. We're exactly where we're supposed to be." They waited. 3 minutes. Maybe 4. Parents passed by on the sidewalk behind them, some in suits, some in workout clothes, most barely glancing their way. One woman looked at Nina briefly, then at the security guard, then turned her eyes forward like she hadn't seen anything at all. Finally, a woman emerged from the front office doors, mid-40s, blonde hair pulled into a bun, ID lanyard bouncing lightly against her chest as she walked. Her pace slowed when she saw them. The security guard stepped toward her, voice lowered but not low enough. "She says her son's enrolled. Nina James. No pass, no prior appointment." The office woman looked from the guard to Nina. Her face tried for polite, but it didn't get there. "Hi. Do you have registration confirmation? We normally don't allow drop-ins." Nina rose slowly, her son's fingers still curled around hers. She spoke carefully. "We were told to come in today to sign his final enrollment forms. I called last Thursday. Spoke with Mrs. Gale." A flicker of recognition passed through the woman's eyes, but not enough to let go of her guard. "Mrs. Gale is our enrollment officer, yes, but I don't see your name on the appointment list." She held a clipboard in front of her like a shield. "I don't have a clipboard," Nina said. "I have the email." She handed over her phone, screen already open to the message. Subject line, "Enrollment confirmation, welcome to Westbridge." The office worker took it hesitantly, scanning. The shift was immediate. Her lips parted slightly. Shoulders drew back. "Oh, I see. Yes. You're right, sorry, we had you in the system, just not on this morning's schedule. That must have been an oversight." Her voice was a little too quick now, a little too warm. "Overcompensating." The guard said nothing, just took a single step back. Nina looked at him. Not angry, just quiet. And then she asked, without raising her voice, "If I'd looked different, would we still be standing out here?" He didn't answer. And her son, still holding her hand, looked up again. He didn't ask anything this time. He just watched. The woman from the office cleared her throat. "Well, let's get you both inside," she said, gesturing quickly. "It won't take long." Nina gave a short nod and walked forward, her son still by her side. She didn't look back at the guard. They passed through the gates and into the main building. The hallway smelled like floor wax and construction paper. Bulletin boards lined the walls with smiling cartoon faces and inspirational quotes about kindness. None of it felt kind. The woman Karen, her badge red, kept glancing at Nina sideways as if trying to gauge how much she'd heard in her own voice earlier. Trying to read what Nina might do with the memory of it. Nina didn't offer conversation. She let the silence settle. They reached the front office, where a few staff members were chatting behind the desk. One of them, an older black woman with wireframe glasses, looked up and broke into a warm smile. "Nina James? We've been expecting you." Finally. Relief not for being allowed in, but because someone saw her correctly. No suspicion. No sideways glances. Just recognition. Karen faded to the edge of the room, suddenly very interested in a stack of folders. The woman behind the desk stood up and came around. "I'm Mrs. Gale. You must be Micah." Her smile extended to the boy. "You ready to start your first day, young man?" He nodded, shy but excited now. Nina smiled softly. "Can I fill out the paperwork here?" she asked. "Of course," Mrs. Gale said. "We've got it all ready for you. It should have been this simple all along." Nina sat, pulled out her pen. Micah sat beside her, swinging his feet beneath the chair. He leaned in and whispered, "Is she the boss?" Nina glanced at Mrs. Gale, who was flipping through a folder behind the desk. "No," she whispered back, "but we'll meet the boss soon." And when they did, everything would shift. The paperwork was routine. Emergency contacts, medical info, pickup permissions. Mrs. Gale moved efficiently, pointing out where to initial, where to sign. She offered Micah a juice box from the mini fridge behind the desk. He took it with a quiet thank you and sipped carefully, watching the adults like a student studying for a test. Karen hovered by the office copier, not speaking. She hadn't left the room. Nina noticed but didn't acknowledge her. Once the last form was signed, Mrs. Gale smiled again. "All done here. You'll just need to stop by Principal Hargrove's office for a quick introduction. He likes to meet new families personally." Nina nodded. "Sounds good. I'll walk you there," Mrs. Gale offered. As they headed down the hallway, Micah still clutching his juice box, Karen spoke up for the first time since they entered. "I'll let the principal know you're on the way." It sounded like she needed to be part of the resolution, like she wanted a moment to rewrite the role she'd played so far. Mrs. Gale paused. "We'll be fine." There was no edge in her voice, just finality. Karen didn't follow. The hallway to the principal's office was quiet. Classroom doors were closed, muffled voices inside. Micah's footsteps were soft against the linoleum. Then Mrs. Gale stopped at the corner. "Here we are," she said. "I'll let you take it from here." "Thank you," Nina said genuinely. Mrs. Gale met her eyes for a moment. There was something in her look, not pity, not apology, just awareness. Then she turned and walked back toward the office. Nina knocked gently on the door labeled Principal Hargrove. From inside, a voice called out, steady and welcoming, "Come in." Micah looked up at her. She opened the door, and nothing about the man behind the desk was what Karen would have expected. Principal Hargrove stood as they entered. He was tall, early 50s, brown skin, salt and pepper hair cropped close. A quiet kind of authority surrounded him, nothing flashy, just presence. He extended a hand toward Micah first. "You must be Micah. Welcome, young man." Micah looked at his mother for permission, then shook the principal's hand with a small, serious nod. "Nice to meet you," he said. "You too," Hargrove replied, smiling. Then he turned to Nina. "And you must be Ms. James. I've been looking forward to meeting you." His tone was warm, familiar even. He gestured toward 2 chairs across from his desk. "Please have a seat." They sat, Micah still sipping his juice, Nina composed as ever. "I wanted to personally welcome you both," Hargrove said. "I know transitions can be a lot, especially with a mid-year enrollment, but I've read Micah's file. He'll be just fine here." Nina nodded, her expression even. "We're hoping so." The principal folded his hands. "If there's ever anything you need, support, questions, concerns, you come straight to me." He didn't ask what had happened at the gate, didn't ask if there had been a problem, but his eyes held the question anyway. Nina didn't answer it out loud. Instead, she said, "We appreciate that." Then, after a pause, "You've got a good person at the front desk, Mrs. Gale." Hargrove nodded, understanding the unsaid. Yes, we do." There was a soft knock at the door then. It opened a crack. Karen's voice came through. "Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to make sure everything was all right." Principal Hargrove didn't look at her. He looked at Nina. And waited. Nina didn't answer right away. She glanced at Micah. He was tracing the edge of his juice box with one finger, content oblivious to the undercurrents in the room. Then she turned back to Principal Hargrove. Her voice was calm. "Level. Everything's fine now." "Just that." Hargrove nodded once, slow and deliberate. Karen stood frozen in the doorway, unsure whether to leave or stay. "I think that'll be all, Karen," he said finally, his voice polite but definitive. She hesitated, then pulled the door closed behind her. Silence returned. The kind that isn't awkward but charged. The kind where everyone knows something important just happened even if no one names it. Principal Hargrove leaned back slightly in his chair. "Micah," he said, voice lightening, "you ready to meet your new teacher?" Micah nodded. "Her name's Ms. Nguyen. She's strict about homework, but she also lets her class earn extra recess on Fridays." "Sound fair?" Micah smiled. "Yeah." Nina stood, smoothing her hoodie. "Thank you for taking the time," she said. "Of course," Hargrove replied. Then quietly, "We want every student and every parent to feel seen here." Their eyes met for a moment longer than necessary. Then she nodded once, took her son's hand again, and followed him out into the hallway. They didn't speak until they reached the classroom door. "I think I'm gonna like it here," Micah whispered. Nina squeezed his hand once, gently. "I think you will too." Ms. Nguyen greeted Micah with a wide smile and an easy wave. Hi there. You must be her new friend. Her classroom smelled like crayons and pencil shavings. Posters covered the walls, bright colors, books, shapes. A quiet hum of curiosity filled the room as a few students glanced up to see who had just walked in. Micah looked back at his mother. Nina gave a small nod. He stepped forward. I'm Micah. Ms. Nguyen beamed. Welcome, Micah. We saved you a spot right by the window. She pointed, and one of the kids freckled with messy hair raised his hand in greeting. Micah walked toward him, still a little unsure, but braver now. Ms. Nguyen turned to Nina. He'll be all right? I know, Nina said. They shook hands. Ms. Nguyen's grip was firm, genuine. Then Nina stepped out into the hallway alone. She didn't head straight for the exit. Instead, she walked slowly past the office. Mrs. Gale saw her through the window and offered a nod, just a gesture, but meaningful. Nina paused near the main doors. The security guard was at his post again, adjusting his radio, eyes flicking up as she approached. He opened his mouth, maybe to speak. She didn't stop. Didn't glance over. Just walked past him and out into the sunlight. Her son was where he belonged. She didn't need to explain that to anyone. The sun had climbed higher now, casting sharper shadows on the sidewalk. Nina walked to her car slowly, each step measured. She wasn't rushing to get anywhere. Not this time. As she reached the driver's side, she paused, one hand resting on the door handle. The morning's events replayed in her mind, not in anger but in clarity. The words, the looks, the assumptions. And then the shift. It wasn't the first time she'd been mistaken for someone who didn't belong. Wouldn't be the last. But this time something had changed. Not in her, but around her. She opened the door and slid into the seat, letting the quiet settle around her. Then she glanced at the school through the windshield. Inside, her son was unpacking a new pencil case, making room in a desk that would now be his, sitting beside a boy he hadn't met an hour ago. She wondered if he would tell anyone what happened at the gate. Probably not. Children remember these things, but they rarely retell them. Not in full. Not yet. But they carry them. And so do their mothers. Nina started the engine. The soft rumble of it grounded her. She looked at herself in the rearview mirror. Still the same hoodie. Still the same face. Still the same woman who had walked her son to school that morning. But now just slightly more visible. Inside the school, the ripple was still moving. In the front office, Karen sat behind the desk, flipping pages in a binder she wasn't really reading. Every so often, she'd glance at the door like someone might walk in and call her out again. But no one did. Mrs. Gale typed quietly at her computer, eyes on the screen, hands steady. She hadn't said anything to Karen since returning from the principal's office. She didn't need to. Down the hall, Principal Hargrove stood at his office window watching the playground below. Kids were out for morning recess, Micah among them now, learning the rules of foursquare from the freckled boy. Hargrove's arms were crossed, his expression unreadable. The knock on his door didn't surprise him. It was Karen. Got a minute, she asked, voice low. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. Have a seat. She hesitated, then sat. Her posture was tight, hands folded on her lap. I wanted to clarify what happened earlier, she began. He didn't stop her. I didn't know who she was, she said. I mean, I wasn't trying to. Karen, he said, calmly interrupting, you don't have to explain it to me. You need to reflect on it yourself. She looked down, embarrassed. He waited. After a moment, she spoke again. Quieter this time. I think I assumed things I shouldn't have. Principal Hargrove nodded once. That's a start. Outside on the playground, Micah laughed for the first time since arriving. Loud enough that Hargrove could hear it faintly through the window. He didn't smile. But his shoulders eased. The school day settled into its rhythm. Lunchtime. Laughter in the cafeteria. Papers passed in classrooms. The usual sounds of learning and restlessness and growing. Micah sat at a round table with 3 other boys. They weren't fast friends yet, but they were sharing crackers and arguing about dinosaurs, which was close enough. He kept glancing at the clock above the lunch line, counting the minutes until recess. At the far end of the cafeteria, Ms. Nguyen leaned against the wall, arms folded, watching her class with that relaxed vigilance teachers develop. Her eyes eventually found Micah. He was fine. She looked toward the doorway then, where Principal Hargrove had just entered. Their eyes met and she gave him a nod. He returned it, then made his way toward the back exit. In the front office, the energy had shifted. Karen was quieter than usual, less performative. When the delivery driver came in to drop off boxes of printer paper, she didn't glance him over or demand a name, just thanked him and held the door. Mrs. Gale noticed. Said nothing. It was early. Change wasn't a victory, it was a beginning. Outside, Principal Hargrove stepped onto the edge of the playground and folded his arms. He wasn't watching anyone in particular. But when Micah looked up from the tetherball court and saw him standing there, he waved. Hargrove lifted a hand in return. The moment passed quickly. But it was there. Witnessing didn't always mean stepping in. Sometimes it just meant showing up. Back at home, Nina sat at the kitchen table, her laptop open but untouched. She had emails to answer, deadlines waiting. But her mind kept drifting back to the gate, to the office, to the way Micah had looked up at her, searching her face for cues on how to interpret a moment he didn't yet have the language for. Her phone buzzed. A calendar reminder. Parent-principal introduction, Westbridge Elementary. She stared at it for a second, then dismissed it. That meeting already happened, just not the way the school expected. She reached for her notebook instead, flipped past to-do lists and grocery notes until she found a clean page. Wrote at the top, what Micah needs to know. She paused, then started writing slowly. You are allowed to walk through every door meant for you. People may question you before they recognize you. That's not your fault. Your calm is not weakness. Let them wonder. You don't have to explain. The list wasn't for now. It was for later. Maybe years from now. Maybe sooner than that. She closed the notebook, set it aside, and finally turned back to her work. Micah would be home in a few hours, and when he came through the door, full of new names and half-formed stories, she would listen. But today, she wouldn't need to ask if anything strange happened. She already knew. And more importantly, he had already seen how to stand through it. At dismissal, the schoolyard buzzed with motion. Parents leaned against fences, crossed arms, and backpacks slung over shoulders. Cars idled along the curb. Nina waited beside a silver sedan, arms relaxed at her sides. She watched the children pour out in twos and threes, faces lit from a day lived fully. Micah emerged from the crowd, scanning until he found her. He didn't run, just walked quickly, a soft smile on his face. Hey, she said as he reached her. Hey, he echoed, then climbed into the back seat without fanfare. She got in, adjusted the mirror, and looked at him through it. How was it? Good, he said. Ms. Nguyen's nice. And there's a kid who knows all the presidents in order. I think he's a little weird. Nina smiled. Weird is good. Micah leaned forward slightly, voice dropping just a bit. Did you tell Principal Hargrove what happened this morning? I didn't need to. He nodded slowly, then stared out the window. People looked at us weird, he said after a pause. But they looked different after. She didn't say anything. Because he wasn't asking. He was just noticing. And that meant he was already learning the language. Not of confrontation, but of awareness. Of how things shift. How people change tone, posture, assumptions. Even if they don't say it out loud. Especially then. The next morning, the rhythm repeated. Micah ate cereal at the counter, feet swinging off the stool. Nina packed his lunch quietly, apple slices, sandwich, a small note folded inside. Just a sentence, you belong anywhere you stand. They didn't talk about yesterday. There was no need. It had been absorbed, not analyzed. At the school gate, the same security guard was on duty. He saw them coming from half a block away. This time, he didn't straighten. He didn't reach for his radio. When they reached the gate, he nodded. Nothing more. Nina nodded back. Just once. Micah walked ahead, more confident now. His backpack bounced lightly as he disappeared into the crowd of students. Nina lingered a moment, watching. Behind her, a woman, white, blonde, holding a latte and a phone, joined the line of parents. She glanced at Nina, then at the gate, then back. This time, her look wasn't one of doubt. It was curiosity. Hesitation. Like she was seeing something she hadn't noticed before. Nina didn't acknowledge her. She didn't need to explain herself to anyone here. The only difference was now they knew it. Inside the office, Karen sat alone at the front desk. Mrs. Gale was in the back room organizing files. The usual buzz of the morning hadn't arrived yet. No phones ringing. No questions to field. Just quiet. Karen glanced at the door, then at the digital clock on the wall. 7:51 a.m. She reached into the side drawer and pulled out a small notepad. The same one she used for taking phone messages. But instead of a name or number, she wrote a sentence. Don't let the first thing you notice be the only thing you see. She looked at the words for a long moment, then tore the page out, slipped it into her purse, closed the drawer. When Mrs. Gale returned with a stack of folders, Karen stood and quietly offered to help sort them. No conversation about it. Just action. That was the start. Across the school, in classroom 2C, Micah opened his backpack, pulled out his lunch, found the note. He didn't show it to anyone, just unfolded it beneath the desk and read it twice. Then he folded it back and placed it carefully between the pages of a book. That sentence wasn't loud, but it stayed with him. By Friday, the incident at the gate was no longer talked about. Not because it had been forgotten, but because the school had quietly rearranged itself around it. The security guards started greeting all parents by name, or trying to. Mistakes were met with apology, not suspicion. He kept a clipboard now. Not for power or for preparation. Karen began arriving earlier, staying quieter, listening more. She didn't erase what happened, but she didn't pretend it hadn't either. Mrs. Gale noticed the difference. So did Principal Hargrove. In the second grade hallway, Micah's name was on a star taped to the classroom door. Now, welcome, Micah. In blue marker, surrounded by drawings from his new classmates. He didn't talk about what happened that first morning. But sometimes when he saw another new student walking in, quiet and unsure, he'd be the one to say hi first. And at home, Mina didn't bring it up again. She didn't have to. She had shown her son what composure looked like when judged unfairly. What dignity meant without needing an audience. What strength sounded like when it didn't raise its voice. That Monday morning had been a lesson. But not for her. Not for Micah. It was a lesson for the people who thought they already knew what a parent should look like. Who belonged. Who didn't. And for some of them. For just enough of them. That quiet moment at the gate had started something they'd never unsee.